gentle marketers. Welcome back to episode 87 of the Gentle Business Revolution podcast, the show where we talk about marketing your business by disrupting the current marketing paradigm and changing it to a gentler approach, one that's based on empathy and kindness. As always, I'm Sarah Croce. I'm the host on this show, and you know that you're in the right place if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur or change maker who is looking for a real better way to market your business. Or you might also be a marketing impact pioneer. So that's someone who's working in an organization who does business for good, and you're curious about better ways to connect with your customer. If you're a regular here, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of the Gentle Marketing Mandala. And if you're new here and don't know what I'm talking about, you can download your one-page marketing plan with the Gentle Marketing version of the 7 Ps of marketing at sarahsanacroce.com/one page, the number 1 and then page. It comes with 7 email prompts to really help you reflect on these different Ps that we talk about on this show. So today's conversation fits under the 6th P, the P that stands for promotion. It's kind of the more doing of the Ps. So there's some Ps that are more oriented towards the being. This one is more about the doing. So what do you need to do in order to promote your business, to talk about your business? And today I'm talking to Christoph Trappe, a specialist in live streaming and authentic storytelling. Christoph helps companies share their unique stories more efficiently to reach prospects and retain existing customers. He has run content marketing campaigns across many industries, including healthcare, SaaS, and publishing. Today, he's a global top 14 content marketer and top 100 digital marketer. His blog has been listed as a valuable resource in the marketing industry. A 3-time author, Christoph helps companies evolve editorial and marketing teams into content performance culture and the use of the create once, publish everywhere model. Among many other things, we cover the definition of live streaming. That's for my own sake, because when I logged on, I was like, well, what does it actually mean to live stream? There's so many different ways we can do video now. So what does it mean? We talk about how live streaming can help you get more clients, why he thinks that everybody should be live streaming, what kind of tech you need to set up, and what to do if you're an introvert. I asked him this question at the very end, and his answer might surprise you. So let's get into it. Hey, Christoph, how are you today?
Doing great, Sarah. Nice to talk to you today.
Yeah, likewise. I'm really excited for our conversation, and the irony strikes me when I just told you right now, let's turn off the video when we hit record. I'm still not live streaming this podcast. Like so many people have told me, you have to put it on YouTube, and it's just like the extra effort it takes. It's not even the tech effort, but more like I have to be on, and that is intimidating. So that's what we're all talking about today in this conversation. So very much looking forward to it. Why don't you start by sharing kind of like how you got into this topic of live streaming?
Yeah, happy to do it. And, Sarah, you're correct. I mean, you have to be on a little bit more. And when we turned the video off to record this, I'm like, oh, this is like, lights go off. I'm just hanging out. Give me a second. I'll go sit on my couch. It is actually a little bit less stressful, but you also get fewer listeners, right? And that's kind of why I jumped into the whole thing. I didn't realize that's what was going to happen when I first did it, but here's what I've done. So basically I've done live streams probably, 6 years, 7 years by now. When Meerkat first came out and Periscope, I jumped on that, and Blab, of course, they've gone under since.
Wow, those names, they're like almost nostalgic names, Meerkat and Blab. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I did them, but they were very one channel at a time, right? So I had my phone, I did a Periscope one place or whatever. And then I started doing a podcast as well. Very, simplistic, so to speak, a few years ago. And then maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I started a podcast more seriously, the business storytelling podcast. And then I published my content performance culture book in 2020. And Jason Falls invited me on his show. It was then called the Jason Falls Show. Now it's called Digging Deeper. And Jason was live streaming his show with Switcher Studio to LinkedIn. And I was like, oh, very interesting. I wonder how I can do that. So I started looking into it. I started using Switcher Studio. Works really well. I am an Apple guy. And then I figured, okay, cool. So now I'm live streaming to LinkedIn. What else? And then, of course, you can use other tools like Restream, StreamYard, et cetera, et cetera. I use Restream, and it pushes my live streams to all kinds of different channels, up to 30. Realistically, for marketers, there's probably 6 to 12, depending on what industry you're in, that you care about. But you can push it all to all those channels. So you can use Restream, or you can use Switcher to restream to the internet. And then I take the content after we do the live stream, and I basically take the audio and I publish it as a podcast. And the reason this has worked so well is because I basically get way more views and listens now of my podcast episodes than if I was only doing a podcast. Mm-hmm. So because, you send it to all these existing channels. I mean, for a brand, think about it this way. All these brands are sitting in marketing meetings or whatever kind of meetings, and they're like, should we do a podcast? Let's do a podcast. They put all this time into their podcast, and it's a brand new network, even though there's 20 networks you should go to, but it's new. So your numbers will be down. And if you push it to all the existing social networks, you already have your built-in audience. You can at least get hundreds and hundreds of views if you've built those communities. You're not going to get hundreds of downloads, promise, when you first start. So it's just a very nice way to truly make your content go further. And you're right, it is, you have to be on, but it also helps me edit less in my podcast, because if I don't want it to be on air, I shouldn't say it.
Right. So does it actually mean it's live, or is it just distributing it once you kind of recorded it in one tool?
That's a great question. So yeah, I go live. So for example, if this was my show right now, we would literally live stream this to LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Amazon Live. Those are the ones I'm currently focusing on. And then it's live. And then I usually have a time delay for the podcast episode. There's different theories on how you should do that. Jason Falls does the same thing. He does it on Tuesday, and then Tuesday, an hour after the live show, he publishes the podcast version. So there's that option. I don't do that. What I typically do is I do a live show right now, and then the podcast version goes at the end of the queue, which is usually about a month out. So there's a month delay. And I do that because I don't want to, if I promote every channel, we're people, it's confusing to people,
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I delay it a little bit.
Okay. So who's actually the audience who is watching a podcast? Because it really, that's what kind of is, when people told me to, stream on, it's not actually streaming, but it's like repurposing the content and share it on YouTube. I always thought, well, who's going to sit there and watch an hour long or even just a 30-minute podcast? I see my teenagers, they sit there all day on their beds and doing that. But I'm like, my audience doesn't have that kind of time to just sit there and watch. So who, in your opinion, is actually watching the live compared to maybe listening to it as in a podcast version?
So it is, of course, partially your existing audience on those networks, who's watching my lives on LinkedIn? Well, the connections I have on LinkedIn. If I stream to a company page, the connections, the followers of that company. But you have to think about it. It's not that there's all these multiple facets of where we're trying to drive results, right? So I'll give you an example. So I schedule my lives, and then they're published, and it says going live at whatever time. There is value in people seeing that post. So on LinkedIn, my scheduled posts on LinkedIn routinely see a few hundred views. So even if those people don't watch, they still saw the content. They still saw the topic. They still saw my call to action. I always have a call to action. Buy my latest book. Do this. Come here. Whatever. Subscribe to the podcast. While you're waiting, do this. And so there's value in that. And then when you go live, there's people who watch it live. There's also people who watch it on the replay. So we shouldn't discount that. And then there's some people who don't watch it at all, but it helps your brand because they see your brand, even though it's very quickly, right? They're just seeing the headline, but that's the world we're in. So it's not just, not just the people who to the entirety of the content are important, but also the people that consume part of the content. It's always interesting. People ask me, do you want people to read this? I'm like, of course I do. But the reality is most people will skim it, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm writing for the skimmers. I'm writing for the readers. I'm writing for the search engine. I mean, talk about an audience, that you have to focus on. Same with the live streams. And then the value of what works for each network depends. So my numbers on YouTube are horrible. Like I just go there because I can do it. My numbers on Amazon Live are fantastic. My numbers on LinkedIn are okay. My numbers on Twitter are pretty decent, really good. So, I don't expect every network to perform as well as every other one.
Right. It's more like, since you're only creating the content once, why not share it on these other platforms? Where usually I tell my gentle marketers, focus on 2 or 3 and do a really good job there, because often entrepreneurs are so overwhelmed with this idea of having to be everywhere. So you're not actually telling them or telling your clients you have to be everywhere. You're just saying, create the content and then use tech to actually find or have more people find you, because you're sharing the content, not everywhere, but in more than one place.
Exactly. And so when you take it to so on the live streaming side, right, you go to all these channels and there's no more effort involved for me to go live on 5 channels as there is to 1 channel. Exactly. And think about podcasting, all the shows go on Apple, Spotify, Google, blah, blah, blah. It's like 16 to 20 channels. And sending it to 20 channels, it's the same amount of work as it is to send them to 1 channel, Right. So you might as well send them everywhere.
Right. Yeah. And usually your podcast hosting thing already offers you that. They don't, as far as I know, they don't offer the live streaming yet, right?
I don't think so. And there's more and more podcast video providers that are kind of dabbling into the podcasting space now. Mm-hmm. But which is not a horrible idea, quite honestly. But I'm not aware where you can do everything in one place. The more companies will do it, there could be an opportunity there for a business. Right. But I'm not aware of anybody doing that. But the process is not that difficult, Sarah. So for example, I just go live from my iPad. Basically, I use my webcam and my computer to have myself up. And then whatever the guest has. And then when we're done, I just push the file over to anchor.fm and then Anchor extracts the audio. So it's not like a horrible process already. So if somebody were to say, well, you can do everything in one place, could it make it easier? Maybe. It depends on the price tag. If they want $30,000 a year, I don't know if that's worth it. But so yeah, it's getting easier and easier. That's what's so awesome about it.
I think that's where tech really is doing us a huge favor. It's like, yeah, we're not having to invest more and more time to be in different places. We just spend the same amount of time, and then the algorithm or AI or whatever takes over and shares it in different places. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I'm curious, what would be your answer when I ask you how live streaming really does help you get more clients? You talked about the awareness of your brand, and that's for sure. How do you build in the client getting message?
So it always depends, of course, what kind of clients you're looking for. But, so James Carberry and his company, they do podcast production for B2B companies. So they literally just invite prospects on their podcast, and that's how they partially get business. So, you can invite prospects on your show. I would caution you a little bit on that. Don't overdo it, because at some point you want people to say something. So if they don't have a good story, it could be, less than optimal for the audience. But if you sign a big client and you have one or two bad episodes, who cares? Like, one or two that didn't take off. So, but yeah, basically, you just have calls to action in there. You make it interesting. You let people know what it is that you do. I would do it in a fairly subtle way, but it's about how do you repurpose the content too. So for example, when I do a live stream, I do the live stream, I do the podcast, and then I a lot of times take the content and I write articles from it. So those articles help me with SEO, which also helps me with people finding the website, right? Or people finding the services. So you want to constantly repurpose and find ways to stay in front of people. Have some relevant calls to action here and there, but don't overdo it, But at the end of the day, it's a way to differentiate and a way to stand out. And Chris Salima actually just published an article the day we're recording this about how you have to differentiate or disappear. And that's one way to differentiate. So I'll give you an example. First of all, I think going live is an interesting topic that companies should consider, especially if they are doing a podcast. But I'm also differentiating my content strategy, right? Because I haven't heard very many people talk about that. Use that same model and find ways to differentiate your company, to stand out differently. And it's just another way to get in front of people. And, getting in front of people is harder and harder because people don't have time. People people are busy. People scroll through things. So it's an easy way to do that. Not, I shouldn't say easier, but, efficient.
Mm-hmm. Would you recommend that everybody is supposed to be live streaming, or how would you say, live streaming would be a good fit for you?
Well, everyone is always a strong word because I'm sure there's some exceptions somewhere. But I think if you're doing a podcast, there's no reason you can't live stream it, quite frankly. So if your company decided that you can do a podcast, you should be able to do a live stream. It's really the same thing. So, but I think there is a lot of opportunity to be missed. And I think we'll probably talk about Amazon a little bit, but on Amazon, Sarah, I stream to Amazon daily, like 5 hours, and I barely say a word, I live stream myself working and I have a nice setup, and people sometimes ask questions about my microphone or my light or whatever. I answer them. It's like a couple minutes here and there. And then I also live stream. I got one of those robot vacuum cleaners. And I put a camera on it and it drives around the house and people watch it. It has 10,000 views roughly.
Oh my God.
And so my point is I'm doing that and I make commissions off of it. But why can't a vacuum cleaner company do the same thing? Heck, it's their product. Like, they can just have a live stream of a vacuum cleaner driving around the office or whatever. Like, it makes no difference where it drives because you can barely see the room anyway. It's like my office isn't even that big. And my wife said to me one time, she's like, it's taken that thing quite a long time to get your office done. And I'm like, well, I pushed the restart button like 8 times because we're live, but it's really just like going in the same room until the battery runs out. So my point is there's so much opportunity that people haven't like realized yet or thought of that, can everybody do it? Probably not. But if you're one of those people that take that as an excuse, we're the few that can't do it, I would, think about it. There's always a way to get it done. I mean, there's no way I can lose weight. Well, there isn't because I'm not working on it. You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's a question of willingness as well. Do you want to do it? And if I really wanted to, it's all figure outable. It's like, it's not the tech that's that intimidating. It's just a matter of, really wanting to do it, feeling comfortable being on camera, and then making a habit of it. Oftentimes, we're not doing things consistently because we just don't really want to do things, and then it doesn't get into a habit, right? You do it once, you're like, oh, that was hard, and then you don't do it again. It's you really just made it into a habit, and that's why it's working for you. So let's talk a bit about Amazon Live, then is it still in beta and is it available everywhere? How does it work?
Yeah, so basically Amazon. Oh, one thing I want to respond to quickly. So yes, you have to get comfortable on camera, but I don't even think about it as being on camera. I just think of it as I'm having a conversation with you, And yes, I understand, especially for women, we like to get a little bit more dressed up probably when we go live. And I've had female guests tell me that. They said, "Oh, I really only got dressed up today for this," So I try not to cancel things. So there's that to an extent, but I just think of it as a conversation. So it's not, don't think of it like you're on TV. Don't think of it as everything has to be perfect. It doesn't, just have a conversation and, don't be a jerk. Be you, be real, be authentic.
Yeah.
And so Amazon Live, it's funny, I kind of stumbled across it, and actually I don't think it's in beta. I think anybody can apply, but there's some rules who can do it. And one way to get in is to be an influencer. And then they look at your other networks and see whether or not you have a good following. So people ask me, how did you apply? And I said, well, I don't know. I applied years ago when Amazon opened their influencer program, and I didn't do anything with it, but I was in, right? So then when they opened up Amazon Live, I was automatically in Amazon Live. So I didn't have to do anything else. Just whatever I did years ago, I was already in there. If you're an Amazon seller, you can also do it. It's a little bit of a different process. And I think those are the two main ways to get in there. And then you can live stream, highlight your products that you're trying to sell. So for example, I'm at about $250,000 of shipped revenue from my Amazon Lives. Of course, that's the shipped revenue, not what I see. But at the end of the day, all I do is if I have a guest on the show, I have like the stuff that you can see on screen in the carousel. So you can see my microphone, you can see my chair, you can see my iPad, my ring light, the computer, everything you can see in my book, you can buy. And then every time somebody clicks and buys and it ships, I make a little bit of commission. And so sometimes people say, do you have to talk about the products? And I very rarely talk about the products that I'm showing. Usually it's me just talking like I'm talking into the mic right now, and then people go, oh, that mic sounds really good. And then they buy it. I didn't say a word other than what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And so other people, they're doing more of an infomercial. They talk about products. They review products. I also do that sometimes. Like I just installed a solar panel by the garage. So I live streamed that and people watched it. When I grill, or my wife, technically speaking, we live stream that and then people buy grills, and we're not really talking. So that's one way I use Amazon Live. And the other one is I do just live stream my podcast. So anytime I do a podcast, we live stream it and it goes to all those channels, and below you can buy my book, or if my guest has a book, you can buy their book, or you can buy my chair or my microphone, those things. They perform pretty well too. Like, so I told you earlier, when you live stream, what are the numbers, and the podcast is a little lower. But I've had podcast episodes on Amazon Live that end up with like 27,000 views. Now are all of those people the right audience? Probably not. But that's always on the internet. Like I don't know, last year I applied to a job and they said, oh, well, this is only local. We're in California. Like we only advertised it locally. I'm like, where? They're like, on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's not a thing.
Yeah. Local doesn't exist anymore. No. Yeah. No, it's so true. I have mixed feelings about this. I got to be honest with you. I could totally see the podcasting on Amazon. I would never, ever in my life, share a product review or anything like that. That's just not my cup of tea. But hey, if it works for you, why not? I do feel like, a big part of my audience, they're actually really against Amazon. So I think for them that it would just not work because it's Amazon and because, the company just doesn't have such a good reputation for treating their people well and things like that.
Of course, it is a personal choice. So one thing, you don't have to acknowledge where you're live, right? You don't have, in fact, yesterday, So I'm saying, like, for your existing audience, like, why do they even need to know? Maybe they do, but like, you don't have to make a big deal about that you're live on Amazon. I was actually on a live stream yesterday on somebody else's, and I knew we were live on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, not Amazon. And then somebody was chiming in from Twitch. I didn't even know we were on Twitch. So, like at the end of the day, I promote where I'm live because it's kind of currently what I'm talking about, right? Going live.
Right.
But if I just had a podcast for whatever, I might just skip over it too.
Right. You don't have to actually say which platform that you're going live on, because maybe it's several ones. Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. So let's talk a little bit about maybe the intimidated person who's like, first of all, I'm an introvert, so how do I deal with this? And then second of all, wow, this tech still does kind of sound scary. What would you say to that person?
Well, I'm an introvert too. And so as I've been told, being an introvert, all that really means is that you don't get energy from doing all these things, right? That doesn't mean we're not good at them. We're just, we can't be really good at them, except we're going to go have to take a nap for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And so really that's what it means. And so just, pace yourself.
Yeah.
Don't, like, I have a tendency once I'm going into something, I give it my all. And before I know it, I got 8 live streams scheduled for the day. And that just doesn't work.
Right.
Or in the corporate world, sometimes that looks like, I got meetings all day. Like, those are not good days, some meetings, especially if they're good meetings. So, but you just kind of have to figure out, what are you trying to accomplish, and just kind of walk with it, just roll with it, try it. It's really not that difficult as long as you know what you're going to talk about, and, embrace it. Also embrace making missteps. In my book, I talk about all these different things that I've done wrong. I've unmuted the wrong guest. Something didn't work. I lost a guest middle through the interview or the video, So now we just had me up, and then we just put up a thing saying voice of Ryan Carruthers, and, and I'm like, whatever, like, okay, cool. This works. It's kind of weird. It's just me, but you can still hear him. On the podcast version, nobody even, if I cut it out, what the middle piece. So just embrace it, try new things. I think at the end of the day, it is actually very rewarding, learning new things, trying new things, getting in front of people, figuring out what works, figuring out what doesn't work. And that's kind of what marketing is about today, because if you don't do that, somebody will step in and up. And it's important to stay relevant in this ever-changing and highly competitive market.
Yeah, I would also mention that, I talk about the gentle marketing superpower, and if having conversations with other people one-on-one as an introvert, right, is one of your superpowers, then make that your everything and go deeper. So if you already do a podcast, great, but maybe now can you expand and challenge yourself and do it, live and stream, and then also live stream to these other platforms. What about the tech? Then we talked about the microphone, obviously some better lighting. I would assume anything else other than, well, the webcam, but it doesn't.
So people always use technology as an excuse. I don't have the right technology.
Yeah.
If you have a phone, you have everything you need. And I've done my podcast and live stream on my phone and my iPad for the longest time. Like, I didn't have anything. And all this stuff I currently have, I got one of those extendable microphones on my desk. I got a 18-inch ring light. I got a 4K camera. And I didn't have that before, like, the end of 2020. I did everything on other devices, So you can start with some of those other devices, and it also depends on your situation. So when I traveled a lot and I did a lot of shows while I was traveling, I didn't want to carry all this stuff with me,
Yeah.
So I took as little stuff as I could. I had a little tripod and I have my phone, and, that was basically it. And like a little VR camera, I use that sometimes. But that's how you can start. And then once you start, I would recommend getting some better lighting. It's relatively cheap. I mean, like the light I have is like $80, I think, and there's cheaper ones. 4K camera, it's like under $50, maybe right around $50. And I think the microphone, maybe like $90 or something. So, and they do make you sound better. So I would recommend getting something like that. And that's really all you need. And figure out how you tie it all together in your workspace. Where do you put it? I like to be comfortable. So that's why everything kind of fits together. I got a chair I got a standing desk. Doesn't mean you need that. But, some people say it sounds and talking. I think there's some value and truth to that. I hardly ever stand during live streams because the setup looks nicer, in my opinion, when I'm sitting down. So I make that choice. But yeah, you don't need much to get started, and then slowly figure out what equipment you want to get. And then, certainly you can buy it locally, but I also like Amazon because, you can just ship it back if it doesn't work, it's not difficult. But I guess you could go to a local store or like another place on the web as well to get the equipment.
Mention the software again as well, because like you initially said, we're used to like streaming live on LinkedIn or on YouTube, but then that's just one channel. So what's the software you were mentioning at the beginning of the call?
So probably the easiest one, if you want to go to multiple channels, is Restream. And it's just, you sign up. It's a software as a service provider, and you can sign up there and do it directly from your computer. I also use switcherstudio.com. They're on my iPad. It's a nice little production studio. Some of those things you can also do in Restream, maybe all, I don't know. But, there's different levels of plans that you can use. So super, and there's others. StreamYard is another one that does it on your computer. I think that's probably the one I run across the most when I'm a guest on somebody's show. And yeah, so there's plenty of options.
And so then you invite the people into your StreamYard or into your Restream. You're not using Zoom at all, for example.
Correct. Yep. You just sent them a link and then you go from there. I think you can probably use Zoom as well. I've seen people do that, but I don't know what the right level of account is. And then you, of course, still have to push it to somewhere like Restream to distribute to all the different channels.
Right. Because on Zoom, you can only live stream on Facebook, I think. Or maybe YouTube as well. Not sure.
Yeah, something like that. So you could start there and try that. Just make sure you're also recording. That's always important.
Yes. It's a final tip at the end. Don't forget to record. Yeah. Well, this has been really great. Very, very good information. And who knows, maybe we'll be live streaming next time. But I really get your point of like, well, you're creating the content already. You're putting a lot of effort into the content creation. Why not, stream it live and stream it also to all these other channels? So thank you for that, Christoph. Why don't you share with people where they can find you and talk about your book that is coming out soon or already has?
Yeah, the book has come out already. Thanks for asking, Sarah. I'm going live stream your podcast to reach more people. Over 200 pages. It does tell everything I know, all the mistakes I've made and how you can get around them. So it's, you can learn from what I've learned in the last year plus or whatever it's been. And it's available on Amazon, authenticstorytelling.net. It's available there as well. On my blog, there's a link. Actually, if you're in the United States, I'm happy to send a signed copy. You can order it there. It's just a little too pricey outside the US for anyone involved, but it should be available as a Kindle worldwide as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. And did you mention you want to mention your own podcast as well?
Oh, you bet. So the Business Storytelling Podcast publishes about once a week, sometimes more. And, we talk about all kinds of different things, anything that's of interest to, as I call them, business storytellers. So basically marketers, communicators, etc.
Wonderful. I always ask one last question, and that is, what are you grateful for today or this week, Christoph?
What am I grateful for? Well, I think in these times, certainly everybody is mostly healthy, and always grateful for that for sure. So hopefully that can continue.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
You bet. Thank you.
You'll find the show notes of this episode with all the links that we mentioned at sarahsanacroce.com/GBR87. And I always record the intro and the outro quite a few weeks after recording the interview. And by now, I have actually decided, okay, I will not live stream, but I will at least publish the videos of some of the conversations that we have here with my guests on YouTube. So stay tuned for some future video podcasts on my YouTube channel. So also please visit Christoph's website at authenticstorytelling.net for more info on him. He also has a podcast called Authentic Storytelling. And then, of course, check out his book at authenticstorytelling.net/going-live-book. If live streaming is scary for you right now, maybe my Gentle Confidence mini course will help. It's a 10-video mini course to give your confidence a little boost for free. You can find out more and enroll now at sarahsanacroce.com/gentle confidence, all in one word. Next week, I'm taking a little break, and then we're back in May for season 11. In the meantime, let's be the change we want to see in the world. Speak soon.